So I did something really stupid. It's my own fault. I got sidetracked. I had left this key here in the accessory position for 2 days. And I came out and my battery was completely dead. The only problem with the batteries is once you go ahead and drain them all the way down to 0, it's pretty hard to bring them back to life. It's reading about 4.4 volts, and the battery's just dead. I had it on a trickle charger and all that stuff, and then I thought, well, even if I use a jump starter and try to force it to charge, which it's not going to, I don't want to be out stuck. So I went and bought a new battery. Got this one from Amazon. It's pretty good. It's got the 16 amp hour, which is nice. That's the one I ordered. I'll put a link and stuff in case you guys need it. But there's a few things I do to the battery to prep it before I even attempt to put it in the bike. So let me go ahead and prep this battery, and then I'll take you through removing the battery out of the bike itself before I put this in. But well, let me go ahead and show you. The only problem is, of course, it comes with these new nuts, which are awesome, some new screws, but they're only so long. That's the problem. And sometimes by the time you get the actual cables or wires off your bike into this little nut here sits at the bottom, and the screw doesn't reach it, and then you fight with it trying to get it to be closer to the top. I don't know, I've just had a problem in the past fighting with these things. So what I do is I'm going to take a piece of this foam that the battery came wrapped in. I'm going to make a nice little spacer, and I'm going to slide it inside there so that the nut will sit on top of that foam spacer. So when I actually go through here, go through the nut, attach anything, even if it digs into the foam, at least the nut will be held near the top. So let me kind of go ahead and cut a piece off here, and let me show you what I'm talking about. Little dielectric grease, little foam spacer, plus the nut, and you end up with this. Now it's perfectly lined up. You got the dielectric grease in there. It's got the foam underneath holding the nut closest to the top. That way I don't end up fighting it when I actually install it on the bike. Because I've run into that on my Honda before, back when I had my VMAX, and I didn't want to have to deal with any last minute struggling on here. So let me go ahead and get the other side, and at least the battery will be prepped. So that's what it ends up coming out like. See a little bit of the sponge. Again, on the side, the sponge holds the nut up. The holes are filled with dielectric grease along with the top of each post. That way it'll go ahead and fight any types of corrosion and all that stuff in the future. So the battery is completely prepped. Now I just need to go ahead and take the seat off the bike and remove the old battery. You guys all know how to take the seat off, so I'm not going to go over that. If you don't know how to take the seat off, then you shouldn't be replacing your battery. So let me go ahead and get that off. There, so the seat's removed. Battery sits down inside here. I do have a spare headlight bulb I have in there because the tools, I actually made a larger tool kit. So there's a couple screws. There's one down in here and one in here. Some of these wires you might see, this is something that I added for the back. And let's see what else. This screw here that actually holds all these grounds, I put a larger screw in there, one that's longer. That way it'll go ahead and bite more with all these, because it's a good place to tap into for a ground. I don't know, maybe here is something I could add later on if I wanted an actual grounding terminal bar, but this is fine for now as long as it has a longer bolt for me, because like I said, when you add stuff, the bolt that the bike came with, it doesn't necessarily go in enough threads. I just didn't like it, it was too short. So again, one screw here, one screw here. Let me go ahead and get those off. And of course you want to use the Japanese industrial standard type of screwdriver. That way it bites into it and you have less of a chance of stripping it out. So let me go ahead and take that cover off. Most of you guys already know this. The JIS, the Japanese industrial standard screwdriver, I bought a set of them from Amazon. It's just that the tip is actually built so it goes deep into the way that they cut the Phillips head. If you use a regular Phillips screwdriver, you might get it to work, but oh my god, it's so easy to round off. So I finally have to buy a set of these things, which works out really well. Especially guys that are working up here, they round these things right over. But if you use a good JIS screwdriver, you can actually take these out because it bites into them without rounding off. So for now, I've got the cover, the screws out. I've got this little connector off here. I just need to go ahead and lift this out. Just take your time with this, wiggle it back and forth, whatever you have to do to finally get it out. And there sits the battery. So, let me go ahead and take that off. Doesn't look bad. And the Kawasaki at least did a pretty good job of where they located this. I do have some tappings and stuff in here because I have a float charger plug that's sticking down there toward the bottom. So that'll be on here along with an additional ground on here. So let me go ahead and take this out, and I can grab it with a couple pliers and pull it straight up. So let's see. First, let me take a measurement. It looks like about 5 3/4. 5 3/4. Nothing worse than taking the battery out and finding out that your new one doesn't fit. Alright, so you can tell, stupid me, I used a regular Phillips head screwdriver, and you can tell that that's deformed already instead of using the right one. And of course, I'm going to do this time is just use a socket. You just have to watch out though, because this one is so freaking close to the frame, and of course that means it's grounded. So the best thing to do is to take the ground out first, like you always do anyway, and that way if this does hit, nothing's going to happen. Alright, so there's the ground there. I don't know if you guys know it or not, but you have a wire here and here. And those are accessory wires that are actually fused into right here, 20 amp accessory, so you can actually come off that. You don't have to keep tapping off the battery. The only tapping I did directly off the battery, you can see this wire here and this one here, that's for my float charger, you know, like a battery tender. So all I need to do now is isolate this, get it up out of the way, and then take this one off, and I won't have to worry about shorting it out. So let me get something to go ahead and get this out of the way. Okay, I actually got it out. I used a pair of duckbill pliers. Just grabbed onto this and pulled straight up, and the battery came right out. So that's not a problem at all. It's just making sure that you've got the wires out of the way, nothing's going to get grounded, nothing's going to spark. So let's go ahead and take this one over to the bench. So the one thing I like about the original battery is the fact that these are thin. You can get your duckbill pliers on there and pull it out. The new one, however, these are pretty thick. And one of the differences I'm already seeing is this one is a 14 amp hour. Original battery was an 18 amp hour or 10 hour battery. So I think the original battery was quite nice. It's too bad that stupid me, and it was made in Japan, not China. Stupid me left the accessory on and actually killed it. And once these batteries, you drain them down that far, yeah, I'm sorry guys, they're just not going to come back. So this was on Amazon, about $52. I'll put a link and all that stuff. So let me go ahead and throw this one into position. Unfortunately, I needed both hands. There's nothing really to show. It just pops right in. Kawasaki did a really good job. There's some other bikes I've had where the batteries just fit, or you got to squeeze them in. These just pop right in. So I'm going to go ahead and engrave on the top of this here today's date, and that way I have an idea on how long this battery has been in case the next, well, not in case, but for the next time when it eventually goes bad. I basically use one of these engravers here. I think I got it on Temu or AliExpress, and I don't know, it could have been Amazon. But they're pretty. It's got a little burr on there that allows you to go ahead and engrave stuff. So let me go ahead and put today's date on there. That's all engraved right here. Now just go ahead and put the wires back on there, and I think I'm going to relocate. I may relocate the actual float charging wire. I'm not sure. Let me take a look at it. It's kind of in a decent place. It's out of the way. You can't see it hanging off the side of the bike or nothing, so I might just leave that where it is. But let me go ahead and get this back in there. Again, I'm going to hook up the power side first. In case I touch the frame, nothing will ground out. And then I'll go ahead and hook up the negative side and put the cover on. Snap this back into place, which goes onto the cover. And you know what, guys? That's it. In case you're ever wondering, this is your, what do you call it, your ECU sitting down in here. It just sits down in there, which is kind of nice. And there's nothing to it. I had somebody ask me, well, you didn't show yourself taking it out. Well, duh. You take the plugs off, and this just pulls right out of here. So, anyway, let me go ahead and, like I say, get this hooked up and get the wires back on there. Guys, remember the sponge we talked about at the beginning held the nut right near the top? So these were all easy to start by hand, and then go ahead and use the actual ratchet on there. So now the big thing is that what was happening with my bike? It wouldn't even light up. Let's have a look. Oh, look at that. It's back to life. Yeah, I had really killed that battery. So let's go ahead and get this back off. I'll never do that again. So I went through one of my many bins, and I've got this assortment of covers that have come off things I bought. You know, if you buy a new battery, it's got little covers and stuff on there. I save all that stuff. Well, I have one of these, and I think this will work. I just need to cut one of the sides up, and I can actually make a nice little cover for the negative side. Do you have to? No. But guys, it's just me. Anything to keep moisture out. Kind of like on the other side that's red. It's made so you don't accidentally ground it out. But I'm going to go ahead and use this. Let me see if I can get this cut and see if I can get it fitted. Also, something I would highly recommend. I'm going to put these little bolts inside these nuts, and I saved these. That's what came off of the old battery here. You don't have to, but there's nothing worse than changing a battery and then you lose one of those special nuts and you're out of luck. It's like, oh damn, what do I have to do now? So I always keep a few extras of these things around. They don't take up any room. And I've got a motorcycle junk bolt bin that I've had from many motorcycles over the years. I'm going to throw them in here just so I have them as a backup. So I cut that little chunk there out of this, and let's see if it fits. Okay, so I'm pretty chuffed, man. That actually came out quite nice. I think it fits better than this, and this one would have fit better. However, I added this screw here, and for some reason it made this thing all wonky, like it doesn't want to stay on. But that's just something I have to deal with now. I really wanted to make sure I had that float charger assembly. So anyway, did you have to cover this? No. But it's just something I like to do to keep moisture out of there, even though I do have the dielectric grease to promote conductivity. At the same time, go ahead and thwart any type of corrosion that's going to try to set up. But let me go ahead and get the cover back on. You just want to make sure everything's back into place. There's a relay here that fits down there. Just make sure that's in. Make sure this is in and flush. And just take your time when you put this back, because it is kind of tight in here as far as the cover goes. So I'll need 2 hands for that, so let me go ahead and get that on. So I am going to use some medium strength thread locker on these 2 screws here that hold that battery cover down. I don't need them loosening up. I was able to torque pretty good the actual bolts that went into the top of the battery terminals. I didn't want to use thread locker on those. But anyway, let me go ahead and get a little bit on here. Thread locker's on. Let's go ahead and talk about the cover real quick. Once you put this on in the position, take your time, make sure there's no wires pinched. Nothing else. I still need to snap this connector into here. Make sure everything is all freed up. Just take your time going around. You don't want to go ahead and tighten this thing down and then find out that it's actually pinching a wire. And it should sit flush against the actual nuts that are in there, and that'll tell you everything's in place. So let me go ahead and snap this on. I'll put the screws in again with the Loctite, and then that'll go ahead and take care of this. Okay, so some of you guys are going to wonder what some of these other things are. I do have, and I always wrap it in wire loom so it looks kind of factory. I have some stuff going into the trunk, including a USB AC charger. That's on a different video. Feel free to go ahead and have a look if you want to. I also make sure that everything is tied up the way it's supposed to be. And what I had is this, in case they want to take the trunk off, they can just snap, that's if it's under warranty, or I can go ahead and just cut these little wire ties, and I can disconnect the power here and the ground here instead of taking this apart all the time. And then that'll free this up, and then I can just go ahead and remove anything out of the trunk if I had to, which I don't intend to because everything was such a pain, including the speaker wires and all that stuff. So that's what you see coming down here. But it really is a nice setup that Kawasaki does. They don't mess around. They make sure that everything is available for you, all the accessories. This is for an intercom, which I'll never use. I'm not into that, or CB or whatever. But like I said, I did use the rear speakers and all that. So in case you're wondering what some of these things are, that's what it is. And like I said, these are just things that I shoved in to protect these. But there's 2 females here, 2 females here that you can basically tap into. And again, 20 amp accessory. 20 amp accessory here. That's the one that powers those wires, including the 2 females that are underneath the front fairing. You can actually tap into those also. Yes, I went ahead and tested the bike. Everything is good. All I have to do is put the seat back on, and I'm pretty much good to go. Again, it doesn't take you that long. It takes longer to talk about it and film it than it does to do it. You should be able to swap out your battery in about 10 minutes. That's how easy this is. Kawasaki did a really nice job of setting this up, making it very easy to work on. Hell, putting on this little back seat here is probably the hardest thing, because it's going to be lined up just right before it snaps into place. So I'll do that. I might even throw maybe a little grease into here. I'm not sure. And that's the cable for the seat release when you turn the key down there to remove it. But I might throw some grease in there just for the heck of it. But that's it, guys. Let me go ahead and get the seat on. Okay, again, this cable that actually goes to the seat, that's operated by the key. I did put some grease in there, but I always use silicone grease, guys, because a lot of plastics are oil-based. And if you use like Vaseline or something like that, that's petroleum type jellies. And it can eventually start softening, eating away at plastic. So I would highly recommend getting a tube of this and just keeping it around. It works pretty much great for everything, but the silicone grease is pretty much the best. So let me go ahead and throw this seat on. Right, so there she is, all back to normal. Of course, I put the key on, and she fires right up. So let me go ahead and open up the garage and get this thing fired up. I'm not sure about the clock, if it has an internal. Let me check the real time. And sorry about the noise, guys. Yeah, they're doing some trimming across the street there. It's always like that when you kind of make a video. Anyway, she's all back to normal. Everything's working great. Got all the voltage I need, and there again, lesson learned. I will never, ever, ever, ever walk away from this bike when that's sitting in an accessory, because it completely drains and kills the battery. There's a lot of parasitic voltage being used on these bikes. So if you don't ride it for a while, like what I've done sometimes is I have a cord. I have it suspended right there, plugged into the ceiling. I let it go ahead and sit down, and I go ahead and hook up the flow charger to it. I keep an eye on the battery voltage all the time, and it's kind of neat if the battery voltage does get down when you start it, but it does start. There'll be an indication right here, a little picture of the battery while it's running, letting you know that the battery voltage is still low. You can either ride it like that, and it'll go ahead and charge off the rotor and stator, or you can just go ahead and put a flow charger on there. But man, it's so nice to have it back up and running. I had some friends down here, and I couldn't even start it to show it to them. But anyway, I won't bore you anymore. So you know what to do: like, subscribe, hit that bell notification for future content. And thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Leave a comment if you want to, and I will get this on YouTube just as quickly as I can.